6:32, good morning. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
And let's take a look at today's front pages for you now. And the Times leads with the rise in council tax. The average bill will now top £2,000 for the first time.
Taxpayers have spent close to £500 million buying beds in England's worst care homes over the past 4 years, according to The Guardian.
A group of woke barristers will refuse to prosecute climate activists. That's according to the Daily Mail.
The Eye says there'll be no major tax cuts this year after the Bank of England's decision to raise the base rate yet again.
And the Daily Express focuses on the Bank of England's governor's more optimistic forecast for the UK economy.
For the Telegraph today, the possibility of a rise in capital gains tax if there's a Labour government.
The Daily Mirror says that a footballer accused of raping 2 women now faces a 3rd charge, but is still playing for his Premier League club. He is an unnamed player.
And The Sun celebrates Harry Kane becoming England's all-time leading goal scorer.
The Financial Times leads with the efforts of TikTok's chief executive to avert a US ban on the viral video app.
And have killer machines taken over the world? That's the question being asked on the front of the Daily Star.
We can always rely on the Daily Star for something different, can't we? We're very interested in this story, yeah.
The mastermind behind the Terminator fears fiendishly clever artificial intelligence may have secretly taken over the world without us realising.
AI has gone too far, according to the Daily Star.
There you go. There's no such thing as AI yet.
No.
It doesn't actually exist yet. So there you go.
Watch this space.
Work that out, Daddy, so who knows. Anyway, let's go through the papers in a bit more detail with the political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson, and Claire Pearsall, former Conservative advisor. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Nice to see you, Claire. Let's start with the Times. Should we look at council tax? We've all just had our council tax bills in recently.
We have, when that envelope drops through the door and you open it with a sense of horror. But unfortunately, councils need to have the revenue in to have the services available that people need. When you're looking at county councils having to fill potholes, and I appreciate the government is putting money into potholes, but it is an enormous cost. District councils look after bins and parking and all of those really useful green spaces that we all love. It all costs money.
Well, it does, as long as they're not all going off on jollies to twin with another, town halfway around the world, which we pay for, or they're not having these works of art or statues of things put up in front of the council offices.
Do you know what? The majority of councils work extremely hard. They look after the places that we live in, they collect your refuse on time, and there are going to be those who aren't quite as above board and will spend money out on the most ridiculous things. But now I think people are aware of that. They can go and look into where this money is going, what is being raised, and how they're spending it. People are a lot better at uncovering this information. So I think it is incumbent upon all of us to look at local authorities, to look at anybody in elected positions, to see how they're spending your money. Because I do agree, there is a lot of waste that goes on. But unfortunately, everything has become more expensive. We all want the services, but they are going to have to be paid for. And central government have slashed the budgets of local authorities up and down the country. So there isn't much fat to trim off of these budgets a lot of the time. The only way you can raise this revenue, unfortunately, is from householders. And that's the real problem when you're in a cost of living crisis. There's a pinch on absolutely everybody. So I don't envy. I've had to make decisions regarding council tax and budgets at a local council level, and it's really tough. You have to balance out the needs of individuals with the needs to provide a service, some of which are statutory. You have no choice. It is a really hard time. It will get better. But unfortunately, as we all know, council tax bills will go up. They very rarely, if ever, come down.
No.
Yeah, but in the meantime, homeowners are facing financial pain, aren't they? I mean,
indeed they are.
Mortgage rates now over 8%.
Yeah, and inflation is still going up. It will go down by the end of the year. I think nothing to do with government or any, but with energy costs coming down, we are going to feel better off. That we seem to, if the Bank of England and the Office of Budget Responsibility is right, we're going to avoid a recession this year. Certainly inflation will halve and possibly go even lower. The chance of things it'll go lower. It looks like we'll get a bit of growth. So by the end of the year, people are going to start feeling a bit better. But yeah, the trouble is that it's all very well saying that prices have gone up a huge amount. So if prices stop going up now, we would have naught inflation in a year's time. But that doesn't mean you haven't got higher prices already and you never go backwards.
Talking of money, Nigel, in the Telegraph, Angela Rayner, Labour's deputy leader, says we need to pay more tax on savings and investments.
This is capital gains tax, and it's all a question of fairness, really. At the moment, that if we're paying income tax on, basic rate 20%, 40% upper rate, and 45% as a top rate. But if you've got shares or you've got second homes you want to flog off or something like that, you only pay 20% in capital gains tax. Now, if you think about it, that is actually income. So should you not be paying the same rate on that kind of income?
But it's income based on money that you've put aside. I mean, it's very British,
or
isn't
speculated
it?
with.
Well, speculated, but for most people, of course, it's just money that they're putting away for their retirement, isn't it? If they've got a portfolio or anything like that, then why should they pay more than
well, in the same way that if your pension comes into tax, you would pay income tax on that. So,
which is ridiculous in and of itself, isn't it?
Well, it depends how much it is. I mean, if you've got people bringing in pensions of 100,000 or something like that, and there are, top civil servants or people like that do get that kind of pension, they should face income tax like the rest of us do. And the same thing applies to if you've got a second home, if you don't sell it, then you won't be paying any tax on it. The moment that you sell it and make a profit on it, that's when capital gains tax comes in.
Well, yes, but should that be increased in line with income tax?
See, no, I don't think it should. And this is Labour now going after tax increases, and we can all see the way that a potential Labour government would behave. It's a raid on people's savings. We're all encouraged to save. We're all encouraged to have that little something extra put away for a rainy day. And then Labour would just come along and take the majority of it in tax.
Says my Tory wife.
But I just think it's ridiculous. And it's one of those very lazy things that if you've worked hard, you've managed to have a second property. It could be through the death of a parent that you've ended up with a second property. So it's no fault of your own. You're not a property speculator. But you would then be taxed atrociously high on that. And I just hate this way of taxing people as the only way to get growth in a country. It doesn't work.
And this is presumably this is often going to be older people.
It is
as well.
And it's going to be people that fall into it unnecessarily. And as you've said, this is people who perhaps have just saved a little bit extra. Their pensions have done quite well, which is fantastic. It's not something that they have done themselves necessarily. They're not these great wealthy billionaires. These are ordinary people that get caught up, and that's always the people that get targeted. The people sort of strolling along in the middle, trying to do everything right, and Labour are just going to hit them even harder.
Claire, let's have a look at the Telegraph, shall we? And this is Easter travel chaos. Heathrow is being told stop selling tickets at all their airlines because of the strikes.
It's just another level of chaos again for people looking to get away at a school holiday. And I lose track now of how many times there have been strikes either abroad in air traffic control in our own country and this one I believe will be passport office. I just wonder how long the industry will accept this when demand for travelling abroad has increased since the pandemic. Everybody wants to go away. Everybody wants to get their lives back on track. And these strikes are just pulling the country to pieces once again. And it just seems that every time something gets settled, whether it be with train workers, with doctors, nurses, paramedics, someone else then starts up. And here we have the Public and Commercial Services Union and passport officers. this is the point where you start to wonder how much the country will take from this. And I think it's really irresponsible to suggest that we shouldn't sell tickets to people, but equally I think places like Heathrow Airport need to understand that people will travel irrespective if they've got those plans, and they need to put things in place to mitigate the lengthy queues that we are likely to see.
I mean, this is an industry that's already on its knees. I mean, it crawled out of the pandemic, and now we have strikes chaos.
Yes, but we have an awful lot of strikes being solved at the moment. But it looks all very promising for the health sector. I appreciate junior doctors, maybe not. It looks like the trains will be back and running. I mean, what do people do if they're not paid enough money? The only thing that they've got in the armoury is to go on strike. And the one thing that has been shown about this is when the government turns around and says, no, we're not negotiating. Once the strikes happen, they start the negotiations, and then we actually solve the problem.
Yeah, but of course, I mean, this is going to be. There's nothing to do with the government in one.
No, this is private.
One.
No, that's
but
right.
It's interesting. At the time when people do want to get back to it all, the demand is really building. Well, that's the time you're going to get some results by striking, isn't it?
Well,
to put it bluntly.
This is the one problem about when you decide to take strike action. There's no point having a strike that's ineffective.
Yeah.
So you then do have to hit people and put people out because of it.
Do you have any sympathy for that? Let us know. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Let's have a look at the Mail's looking at woke barristers, Nigel.
Indeed they are, and this is a number of leading lawyers. You could call them woke, or you could call them liberal-minded, depending on your point of view.
Are you not a woke label fan?
Well, I mean, I don't see why woke should be a term of abuse. I think I'm probably quite woke, but I don't see that as being an abusive.
He'd like to call himself liberal, but I think there's a little bit of wokeness that creeps in.
Thank you very much over there. So anyway, a number of lawyers have said, right, that because of their consciences, they don't want to be around prosecuting climate activists, and it's people like Jolyon Morn, who we keep hearing of from the Good Law Project. And so the argument is, can a lawyer refuse to take on a case? Well, of course they can. I mean, lawyers have a kind of a choice in that. And on the other hand, you also get lawyers who will take on a case pro bono or free on the basis they believe in the cause. I think that lawyers ought to have a right to decide either way which way they go.
Yeah, it's fair enough. It's why do they have to declare it, I guess.
And that's what feels wrong. If we're entitled to legal representation and a free and fair judicial system, for people to say that I don't agree with committing those people into the judicial system because it's a crime I quite support. Well, surely that's not for the judiciary to pass judgment on. It feels a little bit like that crime's okay, but something else won't. And I don't want to be taking lectures from Jolyon Morn, who clubbed a fox.
To death, yes.
I think it's wrong to bring your own sort of political beliefs into this. The law should be there. It should be free from emotion and just looked at.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, defence lawyers, I mean, again, you don't have to take on a case, but defence lawyers often defend people who they may personally not think actually are innocent, but everyone has a right to a defence.
And everyone does have a right to defence. I think what we're talking about here is actually on the other side of the coin, which is the prosecution bit. And if you...
Shouldn't they prosecute people who they don't actually believe has committed a crime?
Well, if they're prosecuting climate activists, their argument is that they're on the side of the climate activists. They believe those climate activists are doing a good thing. And I think that a lawyer should be... Claire's got a very furrowed brow on this one. That they should have the right to say, no, I'm sorry, that I believe in saving the environment, I believe in what these people are doing, I'm not going to prosecute them and put them in jail.
But it's how they've done it, isn't it? That's the thing. It's not saying what they're fighting for is wrong.
Exactly, and I think if they have their own personal beliefs, that's absolutely fine. Everybody's entitled to do that. But to put it out there to say we won't be working on these cases, well, why tell people? What's the point? Do they want to have this argument? Because it's going to be one of those subjects then that gets picked up and people like us will discuss it, and then Parliament will get involved, and then it all gets out of hand. If they'd just done it quietly under the radar, they probably would have got away with it and nobody noticed. But I do think that if there is somebody who requires legal representation, that should be taken. You shouldn't make these judgments just because you think that climbing above the gantry of the M25 is fine. For the majority of people, it's not.
Yeah. No, interesting. Your thoughts on that as well, if you would, this morning.
Yeah, we've got time for one more. And Claire, this is a very interesting study, isn't it, in the Times about coffee drinkers. They're walking more.
Yes, and there's
Some are.
Some are, at least.
an avid coffee drinker. I can quite appreciate that. It's quite interesting because one of the first thoughts was people were walking further to attend a certain coffee shop. They liked that coffee, so therefore they would walk further. But when receipts were analysed, actually that didn't stack up. Is it because you just got a burst of energy that you end up moving around more? I know that at work I will drink a lot of coffee and then I'm walking everywhere anyway. I might go to an extra coffee shop along the way, but I think it's one of these things that I'm not sure necessarily that it's the coffee doing 1,000 steps more for people. I think that sometimes you just move more because you feel like it. Now, whether the coffee has an increase in your mood and you feel like you want to move further, I'm not so sure about it. I mean, I'm quite happy to keep drinking the coffee and test that theory out. So if anybody would...
But you sleep less. You walk more but sleep less, according to this.
I also disagree with that.
On the sleep front. I mean, Claire makes the coffee in the morning. I make the coffee at night to take up to bed.
You have coffee to bed.
We have coffee at night. We have a latte at night, which we take up to bed.
Do you really?
That's my job to go and do, and we sleep like babies.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've reached a point. I used to drink caffeine quite late at night. Now, if I have one after about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's a friend of mine is exactly the same and can't drink it past sort of 2 in the afternoon, whereas I will just keep going. If I don't drink it, my sleep is affected more. So that's obviously, I think that's probably a caffeine withdrawal system. It does look like it. I think there are worse items that I could be addicted to.
There are worse things to be addicted to.
Yes, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Claire, Nigel, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. You can go and battle out these. It's nice when you both disagree, so.
Oh, I love it, yeah. Very good.
Oh, yeah.
Go have a coffee in the green room
Yes, argue it out.
and have an argument, yeah. We like it, don't we?